what's going on YouTube family? It's Andrea here at VW Family Farm, and I promised y'all some more sourdough recipes. So today I'm bringing you one of those. It is actually getting close to lunchtime here, so I'm starting to think about what I'm going to fix for supper later. So I thought, let's do something simple tonight. I've got some garden vegetables to use, and I thought I would make a good old sourdough pizza. So I'm going to show y'all how I make sourdough pizza crust. You can definitely start this first thing in the morning, which actually was my plan. But if it's a warm day, like it's still in the 90s here, so our house is still fairly warm, it's fine to go ahead and start it now. It'll still have plenty of time to sour and have all the benefits that sourdough contains by the time I cook supper in about 6 hours or so. But you could definitely, if it's chilly, start it first thing in the morning, or you could start it the evening before for lunch the next day. This recipe is pretty forgiving and it's very simple. So let's get going. First off, I told y'all about a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks now, get those sourdough starters out, start feeding them and all that. I did that for a couple days, made some things with it, and then I stuck mine back in the fridge because life got busy. So this morning I've already pulled my starter out. I just have about this much in this jar. This is my trusty sourdough jar. I told y'all last time, I don't change it when I got a good thing going. This has got all kinds of good bacteria in it. It looks a little dirty, but it's fine. It's actually a thriving environment inside this jar. So that's why I don't change it. That's why I don't have a beautiful clean jar, because that's not what I'm going for. I'm going for healthy sourdough. Also, I've had some emails and pictures sent to me of you have some dark liquid on top of yours. I told you in the last video, I have the dark liquid. I don't have it right now because I've already stirred it up for today. But it should look like grayish liquid, pretty dark actually, sitting on top of a clean flour mixture. If the whole thing is black, it's probably ruined. But your nose will tell you a lot. If this has a clean yeasty smell, it's probably fine. If it smells rotten, don't eat it, toss it, start over. And this is a great time of year to start a starter because you're capturing the wild yeast out of the air, and that's easier to do when it's warmer. So if yours is questionable, just start another one. I have a video on that I'm gonna have laying link right now. If you need to, just go back to the beginning. I may have to do that one of these days if this thing goes kaput, but for right now, it's been going for years. It's tried and true, and it works great. So back to pizza dough. This is super simple. We're just gonna do something and then we are gonna walk away for a few hours. Okay, so this is one of the most asked questions I get about sourdough is, my recipe says I need a cup of starter, but I only have a little bit in this jar. So what do I do now? Well, it's really easy. You can turn this into anything you need to for any recipe you want to make. So mine probably only has about half a cup in here at a time, because I keep about, when I divide and feed this, I keep about half of it in here, so a fourth of a cup. And then when I feed it the fourth of a cup of flour, it turns into about half of a cup. So that's what's in this jar at most all times when I pull it out of the fridge and I'm ready to use it. So this morning, I've already pulled this out because mine was not on the counter and active and going. I needed to get it fed before I made this video for y'all. So what I did is I halved this. So I put about a fourth of a cup. Now do not get hung up on these measurements. All you're doing is eyeballing this. You're just halving this to keep a little bit in here and start something, whatever recipe you're gonna make. I'm just giving you a measurement so you have something to go on. So I took about a fourth of a cup of this and put it in this bowl. And that left about a fourth of a cup in this jar. Okay, are you with me? And then I fed this. So I put another fourth of a cup flour, fourth cup water in this jar to feed this, because I want this for next time. Now I'm done with this. I'm putting this aside. I can leave it on my counter and feed that again in the next like 12 hours, or I could even probably push it till tomorrow, 24 hours from now. But for the purposes of this video, for these next little while, I'm done with that, okay? So in this bowl here, I had only about a fourth of a cup of my starter. But my recipe for pizza dough calls for a cup and a half of sourdough starter. Okay, so I don't have that in here. So that is where I can tweak this for whatever recipe I want. So what I do next is I added 3/4 cup flour, 3/4 cup water in this bowl and stirred it in. So the 3/4 cup flour, 3/4 cup water made 1.5 cups of sourdough starter. That seems to work pretty well for me. Whatever measurement I need, I take that and I add half in flour, half in water. And then I have about what the recipe calls for. And a lot of sourdough recipes are fairly forgiving. So it's not like an exact science where if it says you need 1.5 cups, you better not put 1 3/4 cups. It's not like that. It's going to be forgiving. So now in this bowl, I have my 1/4 cup that I took out of my jar. I have my 1.5 cups of starter, okay? So that's where I'm gonna begin this recipe. Now I let this sit for a couple hours. I did that first thing this morning just because mine had been in the fridge and I wanted it to warm back up to room temperature and kind of get bubbly. So that's where we're at. If yours had been on the counter in that jar, you're ready to go. Put your 1/4 cup in here and then add your 3/4 cup flour, 3/4 cup water, and just proceed, okay? Now, this is so crazily simple, it's gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna add a teaspoon of salt. Okay? I'm going to add a cup of flour. This is bread flour, and I said that in one of my last videos, but don't get hung up on that. I just recently bought bread flour for the first time when we were in Amish country. Up until then, I'd always just used all-purpose flour. That's it. So, I mean, you can take all-purpose and you can turn it into self-rising. You can turn it into bread flour. You can look up how to do all that online, but don't get hung up on it. If at this point all you have is all-purpose, it will work fine. And the last ingredient is 1.5 tablespoons. You can use olive oil or coconut oil. This is actually coconut oil that I am going to just pour right in here. I melted it slightly. Don't get it too hot because you don't want to kill your starter that's in this bowl. Okay? Then that's all the ingredients, y'all. It's so simple. So I'm going to stir this up just a tad. Gonna get it started mixing. Okay, so I just mixed it with this spoon pretty loosely. It's pretty sticky at this point. So now we're gonna move on to the next step, which is get you some plastic wrap or parchment paper or something and put on your counter if you want to. If you don't care about making a mess, don't do that. But I just spread that out and put my flour on it because we're gonna need this. And then when I'm done, I can just wad it up and chunk it, and it's just not as big of a mess for me to clean up. All right, so I've got my little island here covered in parchment paper, and next up I'm gonna take some of this coconut oil. This is my favorite kind. It's expeller pressed organic from Azure Market, and I always have a link down below for that. But I always take a little bit of this whenever I'm making bread. I just put my hand right down in there. My hands are clean. And I just coat my hands super good with coconut oil. For one, it's great for your skin. And for two, I hate getting dough stuck all over my hands and then having to try to get it off. Okay, so I've got my hands where it's not gonna stick all over me. I've got an additional 1/2 cup of flour here. And I'm just gonna sprinkle some of that around. I'm gonna start with part of it. I'm not gonna use it all because we're gonna need this and we're gonna work some of it into the pizza dough. Okay, so I'm gonna take this out of the bowl. And I'm just gonna start kneading this and kneading some of this flour into this because this is very sticky at this point. And you wanna knead until it's not sticky anymore and it's just soft. If you've ever seen them like on, I don't know, on TV or wherever, like tossing up pizza doughs, people making pizza, it doesn't look like a big sticky mess. It looks floured and it looks a little drier. So we're just gonna keep kneading. We're gonna need about 1/2 cup more flour into this. Again, this is no exact science. If you decide that's too much, stop. If you decide you need a little more than that, stop. So I'm just going to continue this until I get this kneaded in here. I'm going to keep sprinkling some on it until I get most of this worked in. All right, I've got it kneaded good. It's soft. It's not sticky anymore. I've got a little more coconut oil, and I'm just going to take this same bowl I've been using and I'm going to grease this bowl. I didn't even wash it. It's fine because the same dough is going back into it. I'm just going to grease it pretty good so that this does not stick once I put it in there. And I'm just going to plop it back in this bowl. At this point, you can cover this bowl with a towel for the afternoon, which is probably what I'm going to do, and just let it rest. You can actually take it at this point and go ahead and roll it out on a big cookie sheet. and then just cover that with something for the afternoon and let it rest. If you decide to go ahead and roll it out now, at least let this rest for 30 minutes and then you can go ahead and roll it out. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to cover this bowl and let it sit in there, and then I will roll it out later. All right, y'all, it's later in the day and it's time to get our pizza put together. So the sourdough crust has been resting. It's time to roll that out. I've got some homegrown sausage over here I'm browning just at the same time to save time. I've got me a big cookie sheet out here. You could do this on a pizza stone, but you'd probably want to roll it out and preheat the pizza stone and then try to somehow slide it off onto the stone. I'm not going to attempt that today. I've got my oven preheated to 450 because when we get this ready, we are going to pre-bake this for 5 minutes before we put any toppings on it. So 450 on the oven, and let's get to rolling. Okay, so our dough has been resting since earlier in the day. First thing I'm going to do is take some coconut oil, and I'm just going to grease this pan really good so that this doesn't stick, and then we're going to roll it out directly onto this cookie sheet. Use whatever you want and whatever you normally use to grease your cookie sheet. Okay, next step, this dough's just been resting since earlier today, since about lunch. I'm just going to put it on this cookie sheet, and I'm just going to get to rolling. I'm going to make it fit this cookie sheet. The less you roll, the thicker crust, the bigger the pan, obviously the thinner the crust. So this is just my biggest favorite cookie sheet, so I'm just going to make it fit this one. You may have to also, if you have trouble with your rolling pin not wanting to fit in your cookie sheet, you may have to do like I'm doing and just resort to using your hands to kind of pat it out. Okay, I've got it nice and spread out in this pan. The last thing you want to do before you pre-bake this for 5 minutes is take a fork and prick it several places, just so it doesn't like blow up in the middle and get a big air bubble under it. So just poke it several times. Okay, now we're just gonna bake this for about 5 minutes at 450, just like you would buy a pre-baked crust. You don't want to start assembling your pizza on a raw crust. So 5 minutes, keep an eye on it. If it starts getting too dark, just take it out. Okay, so it got pre-baked for 5 minutes. As you can see, let me get a towel, lift it up for you. It's not super dark, that's okay. We're just trying to pre-bake it so it's not raw. Now we're gonna brush it with olive oil. This is Squisito brand, and if you live locally around here in Central Arkansas, they sell this in the natural food store at Cersei, and then there's a store in Cabot as well. The girl that owns it is super sweet. Really enjoyed getting to know her. I actually met her for the first time last year at the Shindig. She was at the Shindig. And so this is my favorite kind, Tuscan herb infused olive oil. I like this for all kinds of different stuff, but I've had so many different kinds. There's all kinds of infused olive oils. I've pretty much liked them all. So that's what I'm going to brush on here. Just put some in a bowl, and I've got this little brush. I don't want to make it like super oily, but I want to get it good and brushed on too. Now you can let that rest for a while, or you can go ahead and top and bake now. And so I'm going to get my toppings ready, and then I will let you know what all I'm going to be putting on this masterpiece. I want to show you these before I start cutting them up. These, Sarah gifted me these when they came over. These are Ajvarski peppers from Baker Creek. They're a sweet red roasting pepper. So I'm going to do a couple of these in some thin strips and lay this on there. This is an onion we grew. We were really successful this year growing onions for the first time like ever, growing them from seeds. We've had a lot of success in the past growing them from onion sets that you buy like at all the fruit and vegetable stands in the spring. But as far as sprouting our own seeds, this was our first year to be super successful, and we attribute that to some of the awesome videos Baker Creek puts out, and they actually have one on planting onions that really helped us out a lot. It was as simple as we were over watering them. You have to let them get fairly dry or they'll start molding on the top when they're little bitty, and that was happening to us every single time. So thank you, Baker Creek, for all your great videos. I'm also going to top it with, this is Sweet Creek Organic Roasted Garlic Tomato Sauce. I bought these from Azure Standard before I made my own tomato sauce this year, so I'm trying to use these up. It's really good. It's just a general tomato sauce, which I like to buy things in glass, and so I appreciate that about Azure Standard, that they sell things in glass. And then I've got the sausage over here, and I've got some cheese I have made from our own raw milk that we milk from our cow. That may be it. I may toss something else on here, but I'm going to get it ready and then I'll come back and show you. So a couple things I've learned from making homemade pizza is go a little easy on the sauce. I've just got it kind of dabbed on there. I've put some onions on there so far, but if you get too much sauce, you're going to have a really wet, heavy pizza that the crust is going to get really soggy. If you don't mind that and you don't mind eating it with a fork, it doesn't really matter. But if you're looking for like a traditional pizza you can pick up, go easy on the sauce. I wanted to mention also, one reason I ordered this instead of just buying any brand is because tomato sauces are a huge source of hidden sugar. So if you're trying to watch your sugar, read those labels on tomato products because they are full of sugar. My kids read in their science book and I looked and it's mind-blowing. Of course you're not going to eat a bowl of ketchup, but ketchup as compared to ice cream, there's more sugar in an equal amount of ketchup than there is ice cream. I know that's crazy, but Azure sells several that are sugar-free. Now you may have noticed this stainless steel plate over here. That's because I am seed saving. So I'm going to get this hunk of seeds out of every one of these because I really want to grow some of these next year. Okay, next I'm going to put on my sausage. Now I'm not giving a tutorial on how to make a pizza as far as topping it. Y'all know what you like on your pizza and it's probably going to be a little bit different than mine. The main thing here is the crust, and you can top this any way you want. You could actually, instead of using tomato sauce, you could use cream cheese and sausage or bacon, and you could top it with eggs and cheese and have like a breakfast pizza. We've done that before. We actually have done that before for supper and had like a breakfast pizza at night. That's really good. So just experiment with it. Last ingredient is going to be my homemade cheese that I make from our raw cow's milk. It's just still in cheese curd, so I've got it in this food processor. I'm going to whirl it around a few minutes and chop it up fine and sprinkle it on this pizza. Okay, this is the last ingredient. I'm just going to spread this around on top and I'm going to pop it into bake. Now, it's going to depend on what toppings you put on here, how long you need to bake it, and what your oven temperature is at. Mine is still at 450, and I'm just going to bake until these peppers and onions look like they've browned just a tad at least, because they're completely raw and crunchy, until this cheese is good and melted, and then I'm going to call it good. So you're going to have to use your own judgment on that, on how high and how long you want to cook your pizza. But that's all there is to it. It's a pretty easy hands-off meal. I hope you give this a try. Thanks for hanging out with me in the kitchen for a few minutes, and I will see you guys later. God bless. Alright guys, so I should have showed y'all before I cut it, but it's beautiful. The crust looks good. This is between thick and thin. I would say it's not super thin, but if you like it thicker, just don't roll it as much, or if you like it even thinner, split it and make two pizzas and make a super thin crust. But alright, we're gonna get off here and eat. We'll see y'all later.